Good evening, everyone. It being 7 o'clock and a quorum present, I'm going to call this meeting of the Plymouth Planning Board for March 12th into order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law March 29, 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote and in-person participation. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting may do so either in person or through the Zoom link available on the town's website. First on our agenda this evening, we have our administrative notes. There are no minutes, no covenants, plans, and releases, so we're going to go straight to Form A plans. First is A, 4892 Chiltonville Acres LLC, 66 Sandwich Road, Lot line adjustment, map 47, lots 14-1 and 14-3. Questions from members of the board? I have one for staff. Looking at the plans that we received, there appears to be a dwelling in the back part of this that would be part of the new lot that is created. Are we creating an inhabited lot that is out of conformance with zoning?
Can you give me this screen share? So if you look at this, it's a little unusual. The former lot line ran like this. So the house sat on this lot with this configuration. This back lot, for whatever reason, has it. And if you look closely, you can see that there's a line that runs here. So the former lot line had a small, narrow strip that took this back piece and was part of this lot. Now, for whatever reason, they are looking to, the only change they're looking to do is eliminate this small piece here and just combine this with the back lot. So
Okay.
it's really, it looks odd. It took me a while to figure it out, but that's what they're doing.
Okay.
And again, I
I
can zoom
guess,
in.
is there another triangle towards the bottom of that lot there that's also
That-
being moved? Is that other hashed line?
I don't know. I think that's an existing easement. That's just an existing, it says on it too. If you look, it says existing easement, so you will zoom
Okay.
in. If you look up on my screen, that's an existing easement. And again, if you look, a little hard to see with the way they did this plan, but you can see where it says former lot line right here.
Yeah.
And so it's really this line that's getting eliminated. So this lot in the back becomes bigger, and that odd configuration they had for the remainder, because it went up and around, is being eliminated.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Next on our agenda this evening, A 4893 Red Oak Farm Nominee Trust, 31 Powderhorn Pond Road, lot line adjustment, map 92, lots 13B and 14.
So if I could, since we're here again anyway, and this one took me a while to figure out too. So you have two lots here. I'll zoom out so you can see the two lots. This one lot here, frontage, and this second lot. So there are two existing lots. All they're looking to do here is that there is an existing structure. The same property owner owns both lots. The current lot line runs like this. They want to build a barn. the hill, this is a steep slope here, so it doesn't make sense to put it here. This is the best place for the barn, so they're simply looking to take from this parcel, this triangular piece, and add it to this other parcel, so that they can site the barn in a better location.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. I'll entertain a motion.
A motion to endorse?
Thank you. I have a motion
Second that.
and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Next on our agenda this evening, street name approval, B437 Pine Hills LLC, street name Broadleaf. Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Next on our agenda this evening are our announcements. The next Cedarville Steering Committee meeting will be on March 19th, 6:30 at the Cedarville Fire Station. The agenda is available on the town website. Town meeting is Saturday, April 5th, with opening ceremonies starting at 8 a.m. It's held at Plymouth North High School and broadcast live on the local scene, which is Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 47. The town meeting books and budget are available on the town website under the town clerk page. The next Master Plan Pilgrim 1600 Forum will be on April the 10th, 6 p.m. at Plymouth South Middle School. Consultants will be discussing information about potential benefits and challenges of different options for the site based upon community input to date. We also have received notice that the Old Colony Planning Council is doing a Plymouth Route 3A corridor study. It is a survey to get the public's input regarding traffic problems and other issues regarding Route 3A. You can learn more about this at their website, which is www.oldcolonyplanning.org. Moving to our next agenda item, we have ZBA 4153, 242 Colony Place, Rayner Colony Place Acquisitions LLC, care of Rayner Companies, modification of ZBA 3182 to construct a 27,000 square foot Nordstrom rack, and the planning board is advisory to the ZBA on this matter. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jason Yakabuchi. I'm principal of RGB Architects. Is that working? Yep. Okay. Yep. Looks like it's working. All right. So anyways, Jason Yakabuchi with RGB Architects here representing the owner. For this project here at Colony Place. Kind of give a rundown on it. Colony Place being an existing retail center, there was a portion of it that was not fully constructed originally. So there's an open space in the retail line, which, look over here, this is the existing spaces between the Aldi's and I think that's a mattress firm. Lazy Boy. That's right, it's Lazy Boy on the other side. And so it was a pre-prepared pad originally, grading and everything's in place, as well as there is a curb cut there with tactile strip for ADA access in preparation for there having been a tenant at that location. So at this point in time, we're looking to infill this final section of the retail center. So it would be a 27,000 square foot Nordstrom's with a loading dock off the back. Front entrance along here. Simple box plan. At the moment, the tenant would provide the interior fit out. This would be for core and shell. Entrance right here, where the original entrance location strip was originally planned when the center was constructed and originally planned out. Here's some photos of that existing open grass space. It, kind of catches your attention a little bit, and you can see here's the original strip. Here's where the entrance will be, planned to be. Here's a rendering of the proposed exterior of it, a modification of Nordstrom's prototype. Give a little bit of a look to follow in with the adjoining two side tenants. Mostly an EFIS and CMU split-face block finish on it. And then, again, this is just kind of more of a detailed elevation of it. We're not looking to do any modifications to the parking, to the curbing, to any of the landscaping or anything around it. It's all there. It was previously planned for it. It's pretty much what we got for it, so. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Staff?
Thank you. So this will be going to the zoning board for an informal review. It's to see whether this is a fulfillment of a condition of an existing special permit. And it's fairly straightforward, as you hear. It's looking to fill in a pad site of an existing development. This was anticipated all along. Minimal impact to the site, no impacts to parking and circulation. So we're recommending that the planning board recommend to the zoning board that informal review of ZBA previous case number 3182, that condition 1 has been satisfied to construct this 27,000 approximate retail building in the existing shopping center, with the one condition that comments of Public Works be satisfied prior to building permit.
Thank you. I will bring it back to the board for any questions. Mr. Higgins?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett? Mr. Smith?
Yes, I see that there's a 4-foot difference between the main floor of the store and the back entrance. So I don't see any stairs or landing or ramps at the two back doors.
Yeah, there will be. We haven't, at this point, that'll be based on what the tenant interior layout will be. We'll define exactly where those stairs will occur on the back side. It'll most likely be in the back corner of the space, but that'll all come along as in conformance with building code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Donaldson?
No questions.
Mr. Grandy?
I've read through the report. I have no questions.
Thank you. I have no questions as well. I think everything's, again, been pretty clearly established. So there being no questions, do I have a motion to recommend to the ZBA?
Motion to recommend ZBA.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson, please.
Can we put any special comments in that if my wife happens to be walking by, that she will definitely just go to Aldi and not to the Nordstrom Rack? It's going to cut into our family time, so.
I believe the ZBA is considering that as a special condition for all members of the ZBA, so you may just want to tag along with them. Beyond that, I leave that to you and your family situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor of recommendation? Unanimous.
And I'm not coming over for dinner.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck at the ZBA.
Thank you.
Next this evening on our agenda, we have ZBA 3284, Sawmill, Alden's Reach, major modification of comprehensive permit. This is continued from a prior meeting. And again, we are advisory to the ZBA on this matter. Good evening.
Good evening. David Eastridge with Thorndike Development. With me is Lloyd Geisinger, who you met a month ago, giving the presentation, the president of Thorndike Development. So this is to discuss ZBA case 3284, proposed modification to the comprehensive permit for Sawmill/Alden's Reach. So I'm not going to repeat, the presentation that was given a month ago. Basically here to provide an update on our progress that we've made since then, and a summary of the meetings that we've had with the Management Committee as well as the Zoning Board of Appeals. You've also received an updated package, very similar to what you got originally, just showed some red line corrections from our original presentation. Those corrections were to modify the payment in lieu from $110,000 per phase to $330,000 per phase, so that the total payments would add up to $990,000 for the project, plus the $110,000 that has already been made. And there was also some surplus text in the section about the fire department that was deleted. But those were the only kind of corrections from the previous presentation. So after presenting to you about a month ago, we met with the Management Advisory Committee on February 20th. You have their letter from their votes from that meeting. Much of the discussion really focused around the roads within Shallow Pond Estates, and the Shallow Pond residents were there rallying support for acceptance of their roads. There wasn't a lot of discussion about the, let's say, merits of our revised site plan and our proposal. And in the end, I'll just read you the two votes, but they voted to advise the Plymouth Planning Board to take whatever steps are necessary for the Town of Plymouth to accept the current established streets within the Shallow Pond Estates development to expedite the construction of affordable housing units, as this specific issue is the major point of contention amongst the parties. And two, they voted in favor to take no further action on this issue at this time until both the developer and the residents reach an agreement that is satisfactory for the parties involved. So that was essentially the direction from that first hearing, was to work out an agreement with the Shallow Pond residents. So then we met with the ZBA on February 24th, and that hearing is still open, and we're on their agenda for this coming Monday, the 17th. So there was a lot of open discussion, and really for that that type of forum, a lot of brainstorming as to a path forward to address the concerns of the Shallow Pond residents as it relates to their streets in a way that was, frankly, affordable for our proposal, something that we could carry and that was reasonable and proportional to the modifications that we are seeking from the ZBA. So at the end of that meeting, again, it was I think we were there for over a couple hours, but the idea that had the most traction at the end of that meeting was to take the available funds that we, Thorndike, Alden's Reach LLC, have for off-site work and apply them in the smartest manner possible to advance Kathleen Drive in particular to a point where it would be teed up for acceptance as a town road. And not a lot of specifics at that point, but that seemed to be the idea that avoided some of the obstacles and addressed the concerns. So some of the obstacles were that the Shallow Pond Association is not an association, is not an entity that's in a position to receive or administer funds. Our original proposal was to provide $450,000 of funds to a Shallow Pond entity for roadway improvements, a reserve fund for maintenance, to give them kind of control and decision-making over those funds. That idea was rejected by the Shallow Pond residents for a few reasons. One, they don't have an entity that can really do that. Two, they fully admit they don't have the expertise in road construction. It's not what they want to do. And I infer that there's some hesitancy to make those decisions, take responsibility for those decisions, and allocate funds across different roads and with different potential winners and losers in that equation. So that was kind of rejected by Shallow Pond Estates. Somewhat similarly, at the ZBA hearing, I'm not going to get these words exactly right, but town council represented that the town of Plymouth wasn't set up properly to receive and administer those funds on behalf of private streets. So, might not have that exactly right, but basically there wasn't a lot of interest in the town getting involved in receiving those funds and administering those funds. So we ended up with that the best way to use those dollars that we can allocate to this was to actually do the work. And this helps leverage the funds in the best way possible because we'll be doing it privately, presumably more efficiently. Thorndike will be on site essentially, building out Alden's Reach community, and be able to have some sort of efficiencies in management of whatever work takes place within Shallow Pond. So with that all in mind, we set up meetings with Bill Coyle and Jim Downing of the DPW and engineering on a mission to see what scope could we get if they could define a scope of improvements for Kathleen Drive that they would find sufficient to recommend that road for acceptance and move the ball forward in terms of at least getting Kathleen Drive accepted. And so we met with them, and the scope that kind of came out of that, their concerns were really including sidewalk improvements with the work. Our current condition requires us to essentially repave Kathleen Drive, but nothing else really. And so they wanted to add in making the sidewalks ADA compliant, so putting in the concrete ramps, detectable warnings, and also addressing areas that the town of Plymouth has become really particular about, where sidewalks cross driveways and making sure there's not too much of a cross pitch. So tweaking whatever driveways we need to do to make that all work. Plus doing all the survey that doesn't exist for that road. So doing the existing conditions plan, designing the plan for making all these adjustments, doing the as-built plan at the end of it, and also setting of some bounds that's typical with subdivision plans, as I'm sure you're aware. So those were most of the things that came out of the meeting with the DPW. I also had a conversation with Peter Gordon regarding the water line. So the water mains within Shallow Pond are made out of PVC. That's not the standard spec for the town of Plymouth. So the conversation was around, what could get you comfortable accepting a road with a PVC water main? And the feedback that I got was, it was less about having a PVC water main, but more about how to fix something if there is a crisis. So the first thing that he said was that we have no idea where any of the services are to any of the homes, where the curb stops are. So your gate in your front yard, how to shut up the water to people's homes if there is a problem. So actually, locating those, be it metal detector or visual, and getting those on a plan was really the first thing that came out of his mouth. And then second was having that they don't stock pieces and parts to repair PVCs. So having some sort of stockpile of, various, let's say, connections, gaskets, that type of stuff in order to do repairs if something occurred. But the comment was, I'd rather have a newer PVC, so even though these are 35 years old, that still can be new in the lifespan of a water main, as opposed to, something that's probably 75 years old and kind of this big in diameter right now. So those were the concerns that were expressed there. So we went and took took that kind of scope and, well, we took that feedback, put together a scope for contractors to price out, to see, can we get all this stuff done within our $450,000 budget? So the repaving of Kathleen Drive plus all this additional survey, sidewalk work, et cetera. And so right now, I actually just got in the second proposal as I was driving here. So we don't have that to present in front of you. But this is where we're headed. We're going to put together a scope specific for Kathleen Drive that gets the road as close as possible to, or moves it as far along as possible to something that could be put forth for acceptance as a town road. So we expect to be able to kind of formally produce that probably tomorrow or Friday, in advance of the ZBA hearing. But we don't have that for you this evening. But as I said, I've mentioned to Shallow Pond that this is kind of the direction that we're heading as a way of providing Thorndike with a, let's say, scope certain that we can execute, we can get inspected by the town, signed off, and we have completed our obligations. Shallow Pond roads have been neglected in one form or another for about 35 years. So long before, we came on the scene, long before any construction happened at either Sawmill or Alden's Reach. And it's going to take years to likely resolve the how maintenance is going to be funded, for those roads. So we have been kind of caught up in that process due to timing, but we feel that this solution is kind of avoids the hurdles of having an entity that Shallow Pond, that can't receive money, can't manage those funds. It produces something that's kind of specific and kind of reviewable in terms of work that we do in the field. And again, this is approximately a 50% increase in the amount of money that we're going to spend off-site, and we're asking for 16% increase in the unit count within the community. So we think it's a more than proportional, let's say, response or effort to mitigate what we are seeking within the site. A couple other minor things. We also met with the fire department to discuss their comments, the access, hydrant locations, sprinklers, etc. I got an email from Battalion Chief Cusack that said, I've received the updated plans. They look excellent, particularly with the clear marking of fire hydrant locations and the phase-by-phase fire truck access points. Additionally, I would like to confirm that the fire department is aware that we cannot mandate the installation of sprinkler systems in single-family and two-family dwellings as per current regulations. I'll be updating my ZBA response on open.gov, the portal for all things permitting. We also issued a written response to all the technical comments from Rick Bossi of the engineering department back on February 21st. And he expects to get updated comments to us this Friday. So that's really the status update since our last hearing. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Bring it to staff first.
So just a couple things, and I think we'll talk about strategies after you've commented. So just two. So the gate water location, is that strictly Kathleen Drive?
Yes.
Okay, so it wouldn't be...
In this context, yes.
Yeah, and then did you envision coming back to this board again, or were you hoping to get something from the board for a recommendation now prior to? I mean, we're in this little funny place right now, so what were your thoughts about how you proceed?
Ideally, yes. But how to draft that is a bit of a challenge, given that there are works in progress. So if you could structure it so that kind of the components of our effort, the concept of doing actual work in Kathleen Drive, as opposed to putting money in a kitty for administration. I think that would be, let's say, understood and appreciated by the ZBA. Beyond that, the technical aspects I see kind of as a bit of a separate track. You know, we'll have to satisfy fire, engineering, DPW, otherwise we're not going to get any building permits. So again, really up to the board as to how they see the path forward, given that it is a, let's say, you're a recommending body as opposed to the permit issuer in this case.
So I guess I'll just say, as you think about what you could do, I think I'm looking at 3 options. One would be a recommendation from the board that Kathleen Beat Drive be improved to the specifications of the DPW suitable for street acceptance by the town as a townway. So you could say you recommend that the board move forward, provided that those details get worked out. The second one would be not to render a recommendation and urge them to continue to work with the DPW and abutters on the mitigation package. And then third would be that you could really stress that you'd like them to come back for a third time with any additional information. With that recommendation, it's hard to predict whether the ZBA would actually do that or not do that. We could ask them, but we couldn't force them to continue their hearing one more time.
Thank you. I'm going to open this up to see if there is any additional public comment. If there's anyone from the Shallow Pond neighborhood who wants to be heard on this. I know people had a chance to speak last time, and people had a chance to speak, obviously, at the Manamet Village Steering Committee, but if there's anyone else wants to come forward and speak further, the board is happy to listen. Yep. Well, it's only one person, so I'm not going to.
My name is John Kelly. I live at 61 Shallow Pond Lane in Shallow Pond Estates. I'm the president of the voluntary HOA in Shallow Pond Estates. I know that oftentimes there's talk about the fact that for 30 years nothing has been done for the roads in Shallow Pond Estates. It's also fair to say that the homeowners in Shallow Pond Estates in their deeds were never given any information about the fact that the roads are private roads. And anyone that moved in Shallow Pond Estates, when it snowed, the town plowed the roads. When there was a pothole, the town fixed the potholes. Several years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, there was a water main break, the town fixed the water main. It wasn't until very recently when I became president of the HOA that we began looking into some town records to find out a little bit more about the history of Shallow Pond Estates. That's when we found out how the town dropped the ball in Shallow Pond Estates. They truly did. And that's when we found out, we started asking questions about water main breaks. And we sat down a little over a year ago with the new director of the DPW, and we asked him a question, a straightforward question, when we met with him in his office. We said, if there was a water main break in Shallow Pond Estates, would the town fix it? He gave us a direct no. And that's when we figured out that we need to have an action plan. So it's not like people from Shallow Pond Estates sat around for 30 years waiting for someone for deep pockets to fix our problems. That's not the case at all. I want everyone, because in meetings time and time again, we're told that we just sat around and did nothing. No one knew anything until we started asking some questions. Another thing is, since the last ZBA meeting, we have had good communication, and we continue to have good communication from the people from Thorndike. We don't have any complaints about communication. They've been good partners to work with. I haven't had anything to give to my board to really tell them. I try to have some communication with the people, mainly the people on Kathleen, but the people in the whole neighborhood, to tell them what's going on. I can't give them any answers because there haven't been any answers, so it's hard to really communicate with the people. Apparently the town said that they don't know where any of the valves are or anything. I have a set of plans that was given to us by the town. They have a set of plans of where every valve is. Now, maybe they say that they can't pinpoint exactly where everything is, but I have a set of plans that was given to us by the town. They have a set of plans where everything is. If they can't find them, I can supply them with a set of plans. I'm not sure, maybe, there's not always good communication in every department, but there is a set of plans, and I have a set. And it's 1.5 inches thick, and I can't read a set of plans, but I can tell you I have neighbors that can read sets of plans, and it tells where it is PVC pipe and where it's not PVC pipe, and it tells where every valve is and every shutoff is and every drain is. So that information is available. We're in a mess. Now, I know that I can't give an answer as to what the HOA board's answer would be as to what, as far as the ZBA, they may not care. I understand that. I wouldn't expect, from me, there would be no pushback. From the board, there would be no pushback as far as getting Kathleen approved. As far as what the board will do, we're going to continue to push to get every single road in Shallow Pond Estate accepted. We have to, because every road is under the same, has the same problem. If there's a water main break in Donna Drive, I'd love to get some help for the 29 homes on Donna Drive. Donna Drive was the original entrance into Shallow Pond Estates, and that road is in disrepair. When there's a second egress coming out of Alden's Reach, traffic on Donna Drive is going to increase.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Yes, sir. The people from Shallow Pond Estates will work and do everything in our power to make this work as a team. We want to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone on Zoom?
So if you're on Zoom and you would like to speak, raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone looking to be recognized.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring it back to the board for any questions that or people may have. Start, Mr. Grandy.
Okay, through the chair. Can staff tell me if Kathleen Drive is considered an unaccepted street, or is it a private street?
So this is something I was not aware of. This is something that you've made me aware of, but the roads are plowed, so it's not a private street, it's just unacceptable.
It's unaccepted, so when it is not considered private, and legislation is in place that allows the town of Plymouth to do work on unaccepted roads. And just so that you know, the gentleman just spoke, I live on a road that's 35 years old in the town of Plymouth that happens to have been an accepted road for the last 10 or 11 years. And that needs to have a lot of work on it. So it's not about not wanting to do the work as far as the town is concerned. It's the funding and the available money that the town has, and they go through the process of grading the roads, most traffic. So the funding goes towards some of the roads that have a lot more traffic on them, like Bourne Road, Long Pond Road, Halfway Pond Road, roads of that nature where you have a lot more traffic on them. I'm not saying the streets there shouldn't have work done on them. I happen to be one of the ones that wrote the legislation and passed through town meeting and the state of Massachusetts. So your road is not private. So I really, and Tim Bennett, who's on the Roads Advisory Committee with me, can tell you that when someone calls a road private, I get a little irritated because no, they are unaccepted roads. They're not truly private roads. And we do have legislation in town for that particular purpose. So my question to the developer here is, you say you had an estimate, but I don't hear exactly in what is going to be done for the 450,000 euros. And you say you're going to bring it as close as you can to have it rated and be able to be accepted, because that's something that we want to have done, is have A road that's in good shape or almost in good shape can be redone and brought to a standard where it gets accepted. Therefore, the town receives more funding through the state of Massachusetts as far as roads are concerned. So, can you elaborate a little bit on the quote that you did receive, that you said you received?
Yes, so there's, it's close, so is all I can say. I have 3 different bids. I need to reconcile them, and literally I got the third one in at 5 o'clock today. So I apologize for not being able to level all those, while I was driving, but we're trying to see if we have sufficient funds to do the work on Kathleen Drive so that it is in good shape when we're done with it, address all the sidewalks, do all the survey, and put a kit of parts together for the water department. I'm not sure we can do all that. That's the goal.
Well, again, you heard the resident say he has a pamphlet about this thick that shows all the gate valves and all the water, and it's great that Kathleen Drive actually has a water supply, because a lot of residents in South Plymouth area do not. We have private wells.
If all those plans are there, that's
Right.
$6
So-
grand we don't have to spend on survey.
That's why you need to work a little bit more and get the team together to come up with the actual plan, which I'm hearing really isn't in place yet. I kind of would like to see a plan, actual plan put together, and feel more comfortable that the work on Kathleen Drive will bring it up to a level that the residents anticipate, and the DPW in the process also.
Yeah.
That's where I'd be a lot more comfortable, knowing what the exact plan is. The funding is going to the DPW exclusively for Kathleen Drive, or you're going to have the funding, and you're going to pay the contractors and go through the process of the work.
Yeah, the plan would be for us
So,
to do the work. with
But right now, it's
inspections from the
still in
town.
that gray, cloudy area that we don't know if that's going to happen or not. Yes or no?
Correct. We're not all the way there yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Higgins?
I do not have any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donaldson?
So how many, you asked about the increasing the units to 16% to cover the costs? Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
The request is to increase the permit from 200 units to 232 units.
And then how, and,
It's not just to cover costs for additional improvements off-site. We are adding substantial new amenities to the community, including a pool house, tot lot, victory gardens, that are, one, available not just to the Alden's Reach residents, but to the existing Sawmill residents. And we also feel that these amenities are necessary to actually meet our market and sell homes. So just in order to build out the community and, again, design and sell homes that meet the market, we feel that the addition of those amenities is necessary.
okay.
And we need some additional units to help carry those amenities.
And how many of those, I'm sorry, Lee?
No. Go ahead.
And how many of those units are going to be affordable?
25%,
At what AMI?
80%.
Okay.
It turns out to be about 278,000 is what we can sell them for.
All right, no more, I don't have any more questions for Chair, thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
In the engineering, or from DPW, there was questions about the connection and the getting rid of the cul-de-sac. Has there been development in talking with the local, or the abutters to that?
Yes,
in
we've gotten
resolution?
approval from the 2 direct abutters for that scheme. It includes repaving of their driveways, which is really kind of necessary as part of that as well. So the geometry has been adjusted to match with the turning templates that were requested by the fire department. However, we still need to get approval regarding any layout issues in terms of right-of-way adjustments from engineering. So that could be the stumbling point in our efforts to eliminate the cul-de-sac. But from the standpoint of the abutters, they want it to happen.
I have no other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of things that come to mind, but I first kind of want to applaud you in moving forward towards getting the roads accepted, which was from the very beginning of your presentations to us and as well as the Manamit Village Steering Committee. I think that's the best way forward for you and for the Kathleen Drive, Shallow Pond neighborhood. So happy to see progress in that direction. And I do truly think that acceptance at an absolute minimum of Kathleen Drive would be your road to success here. We are not, of course, your approving authority. We're recommendatory. We recommend. But I do want to ask is as far as your contribution toward the construction, you're going to perform the construction yourself. So how is that going to be accounted for? Do you provide receipts? How is it tracked? I mean,
I think we should think about that a little bit more. I don't have an answer right here. We stand firm that we are able to spend $450,000 on this effort, but I think we have to do a little thinking about the fact that the cost that I'm getting today will be different than when the work is actually performed and how that is accounted for. We also have an estimate that was done by Beals and Thomas for, let's say, the basic work on Kathleen Drive. And that has kind of the typical, let's say, contingencies, fairly large contingencies and that type of thing associated with it. So I have to make sure that the actual bids that we got for our defined scope kind of correlate with what Beals and Thomas has done at the request, really, of the town. We work together to get them to update the pricing. So in terms of accounting and proof of our expenses, I don't see an issue with sharing that, but I'd like to. Sure.
No, not that I disagree, but I'm not sure we're getting the question quite as you meant it. That's the only reason I'm jumping in here. If you're asking us, let me ask the question to clarify. Are you asking, in terms of coming to agreement, how you will be able to, how we will demonstrate to you what the actual cost is, or are you asking, once the work is ready to be done several years from now, how you'll be satisfied that the dollars have been spent? Because in the second situation, which is what I thought you were asking, we will take on the commitment of doing the work. Once we agree to do the work, it's on us. If it winds up costing $300,000 more than we predicted, we're not coming back to the town and saying we can only do half the work. The exercise that Dave is referring to right now is an exercise that we need to do at the moment to satisfy ourselves. But once we make that commitment and it's written into the contract, it's on us. We are assuming that liability, that potential for cost overruns based on inflation, based on tariffs, whatever it might be. So is that what you were asking?
I think you actually provided more of an answer than I was asking for.
I jumped in.
I guess what I was trying to say is, without being disrespectful, is how are we going to ensure that we get $450,000 worth of work out there?
And again,
it sounds
I
like
think
you've answered that.
If I could, my recommendation would be that you would say, and at this point, I think what we're talking about is the petitioner shall improve Kathleen Drive to the specifications of the DPW suitable for acceptance of the townway, and that's it. And no money, no cost estimates, that's all on them to make sure they can meet that. And again, I don't think you can, if that's where you're headed as a board, can go much farther than that because you don't know of anything else. And the onus will be on them when they get to the ZBA to say whether they can meet your recommended condition or not. and if they can't, what that means.
Okay, yeah, that satisfies me, certainly. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, sir. The only other kind of minor comments that, actually just wanted to respond to Mr. Kelly about the plans you have. Obviously, please share those with the DPW. I would caution you, though, that they are very likely design plans, and design plans are just those, and they are not as-built plans. And we may find, what they are is a good hint as to where things may well be. And certainly, it's fairly obvious, perhaps maybe just to me, that the water department should have tie cards for every water shut-off for every house. They typically do. I request them from them quite often. So there's another source of investigation that you might want to pursue in that small respect. But otherwise, I don't really have any other questions. Just want to applaud you in going towards getting the roads approved, or accepted, sorry. Certainly.
Go right ahead.
Just one additional comment, somewhat building on what Lee was saying. There is one other bucket of money that I think is worth at least talking about at the moment if the board does see fit to make a recommendation. And I want to emphasize that, we've been working this very hard, as I think you can see, and it's our sense that we're not drastically over the $450,000, but we need to nail that down. But just for argument's sake, let's say there's a $100,000 difference, and please, I have not seen these numbers, so this is truly a hypothetical statement. As the board, I believe, is aware, there was a modification to the comprehensive permit a few years back that modified the affordable obligation from 30% to 25%, more consistent with a typical 40B project. And the developer at the time, this was before we were involved, agreed based on a negotiation with the ZBA, and I think Mr. Grandy was questioning the amount appropriately last time, that there was an agreement that $110,000 for each of the 10 units that was no longer going to be built as affordable would be paid as an in lieu payment into the housing trust. So one payment of $110,000 has already been made. The permit calls for an additional $990,000 to be paid into that fund. Honestly, I can't comment on what went on 15 years ago when this developer agreed to 30% as opposed to 25%. It's incredibly hard to make these numbers work today, especially given that what we can sell the affordable homes for is dramatically less, $50,000 less per home than it was 3 years ago, and costs, of course, are much higher. That is a condition of the comprehensive permit, and it's a kitty of funds that we are paying in to the town above and beyond and separate from the $450,000 that we're working with right now. I just put that on the table that if the board saw fit and wanted to suggest that a portion of those funds be reallocated to the Shallow Pond road improvements, those funds are there, and there was some discussion at one point about how these funds might be used. From our perspective, we're committed to paying the $990. We're not asking for relief from that number. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention.
I think that's a rabbit hole we don't want to jump into tonight. I think if that's something, and it's something that has come to kind of staff's attention to, I think there's a whole new discussion that we have to do, and certainly at a staff level first before we ever started to talk about that. And so, yeah, I think that is a potential out there, but not at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. From my perspective, I said it at the outset of last meeting, and I said it at the Manamet Village Steering Committee meeting. It's good to hear that the lines of communications are open. It's good to hear that you're working with the residents of Shallow Pond, that you're trying to accomplish something, and that's all important. Shallow Pond has, those residents do have a legitimate issue with respect to how things went through the town, whether the town did or didn't document what it needed to do, whether it didn't require what it needed to require, whether that be proper documentation as to whose responsibility the roads and systems were, whether a homeowners association should have been mandated from the outset versus later, which couldn't be done. Those are all legitimate concerns and legitimate problems. It's also something we cannot address as of today. So we deal with what we have in front of us as is now. And a project that is in essence 40 years old. I appreciate that Thorndike is proposing to increase what it was planning on spending to an additional 50%. That's a good start. But I do take a little bit of issue with the statement, well, we're only increasing our unit count by 16%, so proportionally it's the same. So it's well above the proportionality. The value of those 16 units from a dollar standpoint is significantly higher. Those 32 units, 24 of which will be market rate. I know you lose money on the affordables. That's a given. I also know that there's incentives given for 40Bs, otherwise you wouldn't build them. So there's a give and take there as well. Just as a matter, I just looked it up while I was sitting here. $1 when this was approved is the equivalent to $2.93 today, 193% increase. So what was planned for in these permits 40 years ago can't be compared to the prices of today, both what you can sell those units for and your costs, which are also significantly higher, and I respect that as well. But what you're looking to do when you say, well, we need to get these additional units primarily to pay for these amenities that will enhance our community, and it's lovely that it's going to enhance your community, but in fairness, you acknowledge it. You're not doing it out of the goodness of your heart. You are doing this because this is what is necessary to make your community palatable for the market price that you need to charge for it. At the same time, you're looking to increase the traffic, and it's not a dramatic increase compared to what's already there, I understand, but nonetheless, increase the traffic on not one, but, well, I say two roads if I'm counting Don. It's really three because the connection is into Andrew Way. Now, that doesn't mean that you bear responsibility for all the sins that occurred before you got involved. And I, again, also respect that you're a late addition to all of this and therefore are not answerable for everything. But at the same time, you're there now and you are asking for something. So at the same time, we sitting up here have the obligation to try and make this project as good as we can for you, for the residents of Shallow Pond, and for the town as a whole. And after we're done with this, this board will talk a little bit more about the request to move these roads towards town acceptance. But we need to do what we can to get ourselves there. I appreciate the fact that what you're saying is when you take on this responsibility, whatever responsibility is that we ultimately come to agreement with, whether it's agreement or by the ZBA, that you're going to bear that responsibility regardless of the cost going forward, and that is your risk. And I also will be more than candid to people when I say, I know the prices of things are not going to go down in the future. So I understand that that's an upside risk that you're taking. But at the same time, it's just that much more additional in the way of traffic, in the way of access, that says to me, I don't feel bad in asking you to dig a little deeper. I'm not asking you to repave all of Shallow Pond. That's not a realistic approach, and I wouldn't do something like that. But I would ask you to dig a little deeper. And this board can't be in the position, unfortunately, of saying we're going to assign that responsibility to you. We don't have the information to do that. I'm also, as Mr. Hartman said, I'm also not comfortable with simply saying, well, come back to us at a future day when you get a little bit more information and we'll try and work more on it, because I don't think we'll ever have that opportunity. I think you'll get to the ZBA, the ZBA will make whatever decision it's going to make. Their level of respect for us as an advisory body is significant, but it's not all-encompassing. So my suggestion continues to be that this board, whatever vote it takes, does so with the recommendation that we ask you to look for more in the way of contribution in the form of actual performance of work, not cash sitting there, given the problems that we have already, you've so cogently explained come with the lack of a homeowners association and the lack of town interest in holding funds. But I would ask you to dig a little bit deeper to try and make this project good for as many people as possible. That's the only comment that I have. So, thank you. Please.
And thank you for your indulgence. Just to clarify, I actually agree with you. I agree with you in the sense that we have been floundering around for months and months, really over a year, since this first came up when we came in for a minor modification, on how to make the Shallow Pond residents supportive of the project. Because we believe in having good neighbors. I've been doing this my whole life, and these projects have a lifetime that usually stretches 6, 7, 8 years. Between the startup and the actual construction and the punch list and the warranty and the condo association negotiations. And we want to have friends, and that's why we have engaged the way we have, and we will continue to engage. The proposal that came out of the discussion at the ZBA meeting last time that Dave has been working very hard on over these last few weeks to define a scope that could be put before a town meeting, everyone seemed to take a deep breath when that happened, said, that makes sense. It's a definable item. We can go to the Plymouth DPW. They can work with us. The only thing that I put on the table when we were talking about is I said no granite curbs. Granite curbs is a line that we cannot cross. Honestly, one of the big problems that we're having right now, well, problem is the wrong word. The
Situation.
Thank you. Thank you. The situation that we have relative to the sidewalks and the town of Plymouth's desire, understandable, to make them completely ADA compliant is a big job. It's a lot of cost. These cross slopes, when crossing driveways, getting them to 1.5%, results in chopping out sections of every single driveway in most cases and getting these sidewalks to work perfectly, and it's a lot of expense. I'm not trying to sidestep it. I'm just saying that when we look to the specifications that the DPW is putting in front of us, where I'm headed with all of this is to say that I believe that the plan that Lee suggested as a recommendation that could come out of this board, that we be obligated to bring the road up to standards that the DPW specifies, we consider to be a reasonable proposal. I'm not standing here right now and saying that come Monday night, we're going to be able to say to the ZBA, we're willing to do all of that. But I think it's the right direction. And I think that as we put our pricing together over the next few days and go back to the DPW and see if there isn't any value engineering that could be done that would still satisfy them, I think that's the right goal. And I think, frankly, it's a recommendation that we would strive to achieve. I do want to just clarify one thing, and I'm probably better off shutting my mouth, but I'm going to say it anyway. The need to increase from 200 to 232 has to do with this, the straitjacket that all developers are in right now, in which costs have gone up, but what you can sell the affordable homes for has gone down. And as you know, what we can sell an affordable home for, it relates to people's income, has nothing to do with inflation. It has to do with interest rates and median income. And so, whereas 3 years ago, the costs were relatively similar and the sale prices were relatively similar, we're not able to get, it's $50,000 difference times the number of homes. It's millions of dollars in difference. And so for us to make this project economic, to basically try and achieve an 8% profit margin, which is what we as a company work to, we need those extra units. And having made that ask, we felt it was reasonable and appropriate to also propose doing more for the adjacent neighborhood. So there is a connection. And the percentages that Dave described are real. They're part of the story, but they're not the whole story. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donaldson?
I have a question for you, sir. So when you talk about these amenities,
I'm sorry?
you talk about the amenities that you want to add
Yes.
to this project, and this is the reason why you're asking for this extra 16%. So anyone who moves in, are they being, is the HOA
Yes.
fees?
Yes.
Okay. And in those HOA fees, does that go towards the amenities, or is there a portion that goes to that? My other question is, for the amenities, is for the individuals that are living there, are they being, is there a charge for the amenities while they're there? How does the amenities work out in regards to the residents?
As Dave pointed out, from our perspective, we need to try and squeeze every dollar that we can out of the sale price of these homes, in part to offset the additional hit that we're taking on the affordables and the increased costs that we're seeing. And so there is very much of a connection between providing amenities that customers have come to expect in a community like this, and being able to achieve the sale prices that we hope and expect to achieve. With respect to how that gets charged, the amenities there are no charges per se for use. There are no usage charges once you are a resident there. The cost of maintaining the pool, the cost of maintaining the park, the pool house are baked into the homeowners association fees, and it's part of their condominium fees. So they're paying proportional to the value of their home. And that means that an affordable home pays a very small percentage of that, because their value is pegged at $278,000, whereas a market rate home might be pegged at $650,000.
Okay.
So,
And normally, as time goes on, those HOA fees go up according to market, costs, tariffs, as you mentioned before. So my question is, first of all, what data do you have that, is it just because you go off a particular model of what type of amenities that you put into your projects, or is there specific data that states that you need to have, a basketball court, or you need to have an Olympic-sized pool? So basically what I'm asking is, without some of these 16 units, what things, as far as amenities, because those are wants, not needs, correct?
no, I wouldn't categorize it that way. I wouldn't agree with that. From our perspective, the amenities are necessary for us to achieve an economic outcome that is workable for this project. But I really, with all due respect, think we're putting a little too much emphasis on the amenities as the driver behind the increase from 200 to 232. It is a portion of it, but it is also the realities of what it's costing to build homes today compared to what we're able to sell the affordable homes for.
I only bring it up, sir, because that's what you told us.
I get that, and that is a part of it. So I'm clarifying.
Okay.
It's a part of it, it's not the whole story. There are other components, and frankly, the largest component is the delta between what you could sell an affordable home for. 3 years ago, we built Sandy Pines, which was an affordable, 30-unit affordable project as part of our commitment based on Sawyer's Reach of Plymouth. 3 years ago, those same units were selling for $324,000 that we were able to sell for $278,000 today as an affordable home because interest rates were 4% and not 7%. And therefore, when you calculate 30% of a 80% median income, a buyer is able to pay more. So, and their cost relative to their income and their real dollars are the same. But for us, it's, in this case, we're 25% of 200 units, which is 50 units, right?
Mm-hmm.
50 units times 50,000 apiece is $2.5 million that comes right off the bottom line. Those are real numbers. That's the delta to the profitability of the project. So by being able to sell an additional 32 units, 25% of which are affordable, 24 market rate units, it allows us to capture some of that money back.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, I just
Yes.
wanted to add one thing to that. The other thing that it really helps is if you take a look at the previously approved road network, and particularly this kind of second connection that goes out to Andrews and Donna Drive, you can see that there are, I don't know, maybe 20 homes along those roads. This plan shows more units along those roads. So having the same amount of road be carried by more units is another big factor in why the additional units help us build more efficiently.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay.
So if I could, and I know
Please.
this is kind of a little off topic, but I was just doing some quick research. So this project, Kathleen Drive, just so we understand how it got here. Kathleen Drive was approved, I believe, before me, 1986.
Can't be blamed.
The original developer went bankrupt. And when they went bankrupt, we had security provided to us from the Working Man's Co-op. The Working Man's Co-op was seized by the FDIC. And so a lot of the problems that came here was that we had and it was unprecedented back in the day when this happened, where not only did the developer go bankrupt, but the bank holding the securities and the bank responsible went bankrupt, and then the assets were seized by the FDIC, who then auctioned them off, and the FDIC did not care about contingencies or what was required or anything. So a lot of the issues we're dealing with in this project really started with the failure of the developer and then the failure of many banks, but the Working Man's Co-op was one of them. I just thought it was important to kind of just note that I remember dealing with this way back when, and it was a real struggle to try to figure out how you could get some level of improvements done in the project when all your securities had all disappeared because of this unprecedented thing that happened back in the early 90s. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. So at this point, since you're looking for some form of decision or non-decision, whatever the board did, but some sort of position from the board, do you?
Could you read the three options again, Mr. Hart?
Sure,
Yeah.
and again, these were just my suggestions, but the petitioner shall improve Kathleen Drive to the specifications of the Department of Public Works, and again, this is a little backwards, but suitable for acceptance as a town way. That the planning board's not able to render a recommendation and recommends that the applicant keeps working, or petitioner keeps working with the abutters and the DPW on additional mitigation measures. And then the third one was to ask them to come back after they've done those discussions and see if the ZBA will allow you to have one more cut at this.
I'll note as well that while we've spent a great deal of time discussing Shallow Pond, which is not your development, no one has come forward really and said that they have an objection to what you're asking for, including the residents of Shallow Pond, to their credit. To their credit, the residents of Shallow Pond have also tried to be good neighbors and not be antagonistic to your needs, merely requesting that their needs also be considered as part of that. So with that in mind, I don't have a problem entertaining a motion to recommend approval of the request for the additional units. My question to this board is then, under what additional conditions would we make that recommendation? I certainly think that the recommendation that Mr. Hartman outlined first would be a good one. Mr. Grandi, you wanted to.
I was going to say that I would be in favor of option one. Before any motion is made, I
Right.
think that is the best way to move forward here.
I certainly,
Not only do we have a developer here trying to move forward, but we have residents that want to see some type of closure, so to speak, as far as Shallow Pond Road is concerned. And just quickly, what is the length, overall length of Shallow Pond Road?
well, you're talking about Kathleen?
Kathleen, the one we're going to look at getting
Yeah, I believe
accepted,
it's 3,500 linear feet.
0.6 of a mile?
That's about the same, yep.
Okay. So I remember a guy who used to be the engineer in the town of Plymouth, Sid Cashee. And being on the Roads Advisory Committee, Tim, as well, it's roughly about $1 million a mile to completely do an acceptable subdivision road. So at 0.6, you're right at 450 to 500,000, right in that time frame, if you're going to do it from scratch. So I think all the things that your suggestion are going to do to bring this road to an acceptance level for the residents and work with the DPW to accomplish that, for me, is the way to go.
I would support that with the caveat that I would also like to add that that would be the minimum that we would recommend to the ZBA, but would encourage the developer and the residents to see if there's any further mitigation that may be acceptable to both. Be creative.
So we make that, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, please.
If we make that motion, that also includes acceptance by the DPW, all the questions asked by the fire department, staff's recommendations, everything else that is within the report. Correct?
Agreed, yes.
Is that a motion?
Mr. Bennett?
I think for further discussion, too, I think that should the, actually, it's almost silly to think that there would be money left over at the completion of bringing Kathleen Drive up to the level of the DPW specifications necessary for
And that's the
acceptance.
difficult part, because I don't think we want to try to figure out what money is.
Yeah.
You know,
You wanna
how-
stay on.
Who does the bid? Yeah, I think the best we can do is to talk about physical improvements.
Understood. So I think that the first option, which really is the only option that really makes us have relevant teeth in this issue, is to recommend the approval. Ultimately, what we're being asked, I think, here is to approve the additional units, and the condition being that the developer improve Kathleen Drive to the point where the DPW is satisfied that it's at a level that it can be accepted as a town road. So I'm prepared to make that a motion.
Okay.
Is that an official motion?
I believe, Mr. Bennett, is that
Is that an
a
official
motion?
Let's make that a motion unless there's further discussion, but we can have discussion after the motion as well.
Okay, that's the motion,
And I will second the motion.
and I have a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, I will, and I'm going to, I'm going to ask Mr. Bennett and Mr. Grandy to, will they amend the motion to say that it, at a minimum, to improve Kathleen, but to encourage the developer and the community to work towards additional mitigation? And I'll even say specifically, at least directing towards Andrew Way, which is serving as a second access point. Donna? Well, Donna goes into, is it Donna going into Andrew, which goes into? Okay. I'll Donna and Andrew, to the extent that they are entering into the proposed development.
Risk creating another problem by omitting one of the other streets. I think we're probably better off by just encouraging additional improvements to the Shallow Pond Estates and leave it open.
Okay, I'm fine with
Right,
that.
rather than enumerate every street in the subdivision.
Correct. Well, Mr. Bennett, will you amend your?
I will amend my motion.
Will you amend your second?
Second, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? It is unanimous. That is our recommendation to the ZBA. I wish you the best of luck, not just with the ZBA, but more importantly, with the neighbors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. One last matter before us tonight is setting up, as you've seen in your packet, we've received a request from the Manamet Village Steering Committee on behalf of the Shallow Pond neighborhood to undertake whatever efforts we can to see that the roads in Shallow Pond become accepted roads by the town. Now, obviously, that is not within our authority by any stretch. However, there's nothing that prevents the planning board from making the request to the Roads Advisory Committee to review that, to undertake that review, and to report back to the planning board and the select board regarding their findings. I think Mr. Hartman has done a pretty, and Ms. Lind have done a pretty decent job in terms of going through the history, and the residents of Shallow Pond have done an extraordinary job in terms of their research. And they have a great deal of information, including information that does ultimately suggest that while the town may have at some point later decided that these were to be unaccepted roads, that may not have been the initial intention. And under those circumstances, the residents of Shallow Pond should not be the ones who suffer, particularly as you have people who did purchase with the reasonable expectation of accepted roads. And you know, we are where we are, and we cannot rewrite history, but we need to do what we can to address a situation that has gotten out of hand for the reasons that Mr. Hartman mentioned. So I would ask this board whether they agree that we should go ahead and refer the request to the Roads Advisory Committee, and given that we have the chair and a sitting member right here, they would know best exactly what process to follow and what we can do to try and create the best possible situation in the soonest possible time frame for the residents of Shallow Pond to finally have a resolution to their roads issue.
Mr. Chairman of the Roads Advisory Committee.
I'm certainly willing to take that on behalf of the entire Roads Advisory Committee as the chair. I don't believe I should be the one to make the motion, so.
Okay, well, I will make the motion. I move that this board refer the matter to the Roads Advisory Committee with the ultimate that working with the residents of Shallow Pond and the Department of Planning and Community Development, and come back and provide us with a report regarding their findings.
And I would second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would include the DPW
Well-
and acting town engineer.
Absolutely, I would say any town bodies that the Roads Advisory Committee feels it's necessary to accomplish its task. And Mr. Smith, I'll ask for your vote as well on this one. So, all in favor? Unanimous. Hopefully, this at least starts moving the process forward.
Well,
and
if I may,
please, Mr. Grandy.
we've been working on this same exact scenario, just not on this particular development. We've been working on this for over 20 years. So it's not just your particular neighborhood. It's across the entire town. At one time, there were 200 miles almost of what were considered private roads, not accepted by the town of Plymouth and not recognized by the state of Massachusetts. So by state law, they said you could not do anything else other than emergency repairs on these roads that were not considered accepted in public. So we had a vote, I think it was 24 years ago or 22 years ago, Lee, when we had the whole town had to vote to continue plowing roads that were not public roads. And the residents of the town voted yes, continue to plow the roads that were on the existing plow list that the town had. And then years later, the legislation came into play, which allows, again, I hate to repeat myself, but funding can be spent on unaccepted roads to make improvements to those roads also. So it's not that you need to become a public road to receive a benefit of improvements on your unaccepted road. Again, it comes down to the funding and the money available to the DPW and the town itself. There's a lot of costs associated with working on roads, and it just escalates and escalates, and you do your best to come to a road surface rating scenario and try to bring your road surface rating across the entire town, at least at a level keel or a small uphill climb, to improve all the roads in the entire town. So it's a long process, but again, through the chair of the Roads Advisory Committee and the Planning Board chair, we're certainly willing to do the work that's needed and try our best to get something accomplished, which we have over the past 20 years.
Yes, and the board appreciates it and looks forward to the report so that we and the community can better understand what goes into all of this. And that's part of this too, is that this will be an opportunity to examine something that, as you said, Mr. Grandy, has been a long-standing issue, one that you personally have been instrumental in making some very important changes on. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Bennett, for chairing that. And thank you again on our behalf to all of the residents of Shallow Pond for being good neighbors and being the voice of reason in a very difficult circumstance. If we have nothing else this evening, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.